Wait, what are you doing? That's what she said. Not yes, not my name, not even a smile. Just that. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't excited either. It was confused, almost irritated. I was already on one knee. The ring box was open in my hand. My thumb was shaking against the velvet hinge. I could hear it creak. Or maybe that was just in my head. Her entire family was standing around the long dining table. Phones were out. Her mother had both hands over her mouth. But not in shock. More like she was bracing for something. Her dad's smile slowly faded. He looked at her. Not at me. I remember the exact sound of the restaurant in that moment. Silverware clinking somewhere behind me. A waiter whispering, "Oh." Someone at another table laughing at something unrelated. And then silence at ours. I tried to smile. I even let out a small, nervous laugh. I wanted to do this properly, I said. She didn't move, didn't step forward, didn't cry. She looked around the table first, at her mom, at her sister, then back at me. "Why would you do this here?" she asked. My knee started to hurt. No one said anything. Her cousin lowered his phone slowly. Somebody coughed. I felt my face getting hot. My ears, too. I was still kneeling, still holding the ring. And for the first time in our 3-year relationship, I realized I might be the only person in that room who thought this was a good idea. That morning didn't feel like a disaster waiting to happen. It felt important. I left work early. First time in months. My manager raised an eyebrow when I asked, but he didn't argue. I don't usually ask for favors. The ring was in the inside pocket of my jacket. I kept checking it like it might disappear. I'd picked it up 2 weeks earlier. 3 paychecks. Cutting back on everything. Sold my old watch to cover the difference. Nothing flashy, just simple. White gold, oval diamond, clean. She once said she didn't like over-the-top stuff, so I kept it modest. I texted her dad that afternoon. "Tonight's still okay?" He replied with a thumbs up. That was it. I took that as approval. I even stopped by the restaurant an hour before dinner, spoke to the manager, asked if we could have the back corner after dessert. He smiled like he'd seen this 100 times. "Don't worry," he said. "She'll say yes." I believed him. I remember standing in the bathroom before everyone arrived, looking at myself in the mirror, adjusting my collar twice, washing my hands even though they weren't dirty. My palms were sweating anyway. I kept rehearsing the sentence in my head. Nothing dramatic, just honest, just simple. Outside, I could see her family's cars pulling into the lot. Her mom always parks crooked. Her sister plays loud music with the windows down. Normal night. That's what I thought. When she walked in and smiled at me across the entrance, I felt calm. Like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I didn't see any warning signs. Not then. I'm 32. I work as a project estimator for a mid-sized construction company in Columbus. Mostly commercial builds, warehouses, medical offices, nothing glamorous. My days are spreadsheets, site visits, and coffee that's too strong. I rent a 2-bedroom townhouse about 15 minutes from downtown. Quiet street, old brick buildings. I mow my own patch of grass on Sundays. I fix things instead of replacing them. I drive a 2014 Accord. Paid off last year. I'm not flashy. Never was. Most of my routine is predictable. Up at 6. Gym 3 times a week. Pack lunch instead of ordering out. I keep receipts in a drawer in the kitchen. I track expenses on a basic app. Nothing complicated. My dad raised me like that. "Handle your business first," he used to say. So I do. I met Leora at a friend's housewarming party. She was louder than everyone else in the room. Not obnoxious, just alive. People naturally leaned toward her when she talked. She worked in marketing, remote job, flexible hours, big friend group, always something going on. We were different in that way. But I thought that balanced us. I didn't rush things. 3 years is long enough to know, I figured. I had a stable job, no debt, savings account, growing. I'd already pictured where we'd put a dining table if she moved in. I don't make impulsive decisions. That's what made that night harder to understand. Because I didn't feel impulsive. I felt prepared. Leora's family is close. Not the quiet kind of close. The loud kind. Everyone talking at once. Opinions flying across the table like plates being passed around. Her mother Mirella runs the room. Always has. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. When she speaks, people pause. Her dad, Soren, laughs at everything she says before anyone else does. Her older sister, Kalina, is the golden one. Married, 2 kids, posts polished holiday photos every year. Her husband, Dario, owns a small tech firm and somehow always finds a way to mention it casually. Then there's me. I was the steady boyfriend, the reliable ride, the guy who showed up early and stayed late to help stack chairs after backyard parties. No one ever insulted me directly. It was more subtle than that. Little comparisons. Dario surprised Kalina with a trip to Lisbon last month. You're still renting? Construction must be exhausting. Leora could never date someone who works nights. Said with smiles. Said like jokes. At dinners, if finances came up, the conversation shifted toward Dario. Investments, equity, growth. I'd sip my drink and listen. When the check arrived, I usually grabbed it first. It felt right. I was asking to marry their daughter. That's what men do, I thought. Her mom would sometimes say, you didn't have to. But she never stopped me. And Leora? She rarely stepped in when the teasing leaned too far. She'd squeeze my knee under the table sometimes. Small gesture. Like that was enough. I told myself families take time, that earning your place isn't instant. I thought proposing would change the way they saw me. I thought kneeling down in front of them would show commitment. Looking back, I'm not sure they ever saw me as permanent. Just present. It didn't happen all at once. Nothing obvious. Nothing loud, just small things stacking up. When her brother Ilar moved apartments, his friends bailed last minute. I rented the truck, took the day off, carried boxes up 3 flights of stairs while he complained about the heat. He said, "You're a lifesaver, man." Never offered gas money. I didn't ask. When her mom's dishwasher broke, I drove over after work. Spent 2 hours under the sink trying to fix a clog. Ended up replacing a part myself. She thanked me. Gave me leftovers in a plastic container. When we went out with her friends, I usually covered the Uber home. Sometimes the whole dinner if the bill got confusing and no one wanted to split it properly. It became normal. If something needed organizing, lifting, paying, or fixing, I was the one who handled it. I told myself that's what partners do. Leora would say, "You're just better at that stuff than me," or "You don't mind, right?" And I didn't. At least I thought I didn't. There were smaller things too. Her birthday trip to Chicago. I paid for the flights because her bonus hadn't hit yet. It eventually did. The reimbursement never came up again. Holiday gifts. I'd put thought into hers. She'd sometimes forget to wrap mine. Not cruel, just distracted. Once, during a family dinner, her sister joked. Leora found herself a responsible one. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. But something about the phrasing stuck with me. Found herself, like I was a utility, a smart acquisition, not a partner. Whenever I tried to talk about future plans, timelines, living arrangements, savings, she'd say, "Why rush? We're good." And we were good, mostly. We didn't fight often, but when we did, it usually ended with me apologizing first, even when I wasn't sure what I'd done wrong, because I preferred peace. I kept thinking commitment would settle everything, that once I showed I was serious, publicly serious, the balance would shift. They'd stop seeing me as helpful and start seeing me as family. I didn't realize I was already overextending just to stay in the room. The dinner wasn't random. It was her mom's birthday. Big one. 60. Private room at Bellarno's. Long rectangular table. 18 people confirmed. Leora mentioned it weeks earlier. Everyone's coming. Even Kalina's in-laws, she said. That stuck with me. Everyone. I asked her dad 3 days before. We were standing outside their house after helping move patio furniture in. I've been thinking, I said, about asking her. He looked at me for a second, then nodded. Well, he said, if you're going to do it right. That was all. No warning, no hesitation. So I took it as approval. The timing made sense in my head. Family already gathered. Celebratory mood, her mom happy, good wine flowing, cameras ready, public but intimate. I coordinated with the restaurant manager. Dessert would come out. I'd stand for a toast. Simple. I didn't tell Leora. I wanted it to feel organic. The night of the dinner, everyone was in high spirits. Her sister was showing baby pictures on her phone. Her dad was already halfway through his second glass of red. Leora looked relaxed, laughing, leaning into me when she talked. At one point, she squeezed my hand under the table and said, "Thanks for being here." Like I'd done something special just by showing up. When dessert plates started clearing, my heart began pounding. The manager gave me a small nod from across the room. I stood up with my glass. The room quieted. I remember thinking, this is it. This is where everything shifts. I thought I was stepping into my place. I didn't realize I was stepping into something else entirely. I tapped my glass lightly. Nothing dramatic, just enough to get attention. Conversation slowed, chairs shifted. A few smiles turned toward me. I kept it short. "I know tonight is about Morella," I said, nodding toward her mom. "But I just wanted to say something." Leora looked up at me. Curious, not suspicious, just waiting. "I've been part of this family for 3 years now," I continued, "and I've learned how important showing up is. For each other." My voice was steady. I made sure of that. Then I looked at her. "Leora, you know I don't do big speeches, but I know what I want." That's when I reached into my jacket. There was a small shift in the room. People straightened, a few gasps. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." I stepped back from my chair, lowered myself down. The floor felt harder than I expected. I opened the box. The ring caught the overhead light. And then I looked up at her. Her smile froze. It didn't disappear. It just stopped growing. The room went very quiet. I said her name again. "Will you marry me?" She blinked. Her eyes moved, not to me, but around the table, to her mom, to her sister, to her dad. There was a long pause, longer than it should have been. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. She let out a small laugh. Not a happy one. "What are you doing?" she said softly. I thought she was overwhelmed, so I stayed there, waiting. Then she shook her head. "Why would you do this here?" And just like that, the room shifted. Phones lowered. Smiles faded. No one clapped. No one said a word. I was still kneeling, holding the ring, and realizing I had completely misread the moment. The silence didn't break all at once. It cracked. Her sister was the first to speak. "Okay. Wow," Kalina said, half laughing. "This is, unexpected." Unexpected, like I'd shown up in the wrong outfit. Her mom leaned forward slowly, not smiling anymore. "Leora doesn't like attention like this," she said, calm, controlled. I was still on one knee. Leora hadn't answered. She hadn't told me to get up either. Her dad cleared his throat. "Maybe this isn't the right setting." Someone at the far end of the table muttered, "Did she even know?" A cousin whispered something that made 2 people snicker. I stood up, not because anyone told me to, because staying down there started to feel ridiculous. My knee had gone numb. I closed the ring box. The click sounded louder than it should have. Leora crossed her arms. I don't understand why you'd put me on the spot like this," she said. "On the spot? like I'd cornered her. I thought, I started. She cut me off. You thought this would be cute? There were a few awkward laughs around the table, the kind people use when they don't know where to look. Her mom reached for her wine. This is something you discuss privately first, she said, not during a birthday dinner. I felt every pair of eyes on me, judging, measuring, reassessing. No one asked how I felt. No one said, "That was brave." It wasn't anger in the room. It was embarrassment. But it wasn't theirs. It was mine. And I could feel it settling over me while they all slowly adjusted back into their chairs, like I'd interrupted something important, like I'd misbehaved. I sat back down without saying another word. The chair scraped against the floor, loud in the quiet room. My hands rested on my knees, ring box still closed in my palm. I could feel my pulse in my temples, my ears ringing faintly. The family resumed talking. Not to me, not with me, around me. Her sister whispered something to Leora. Leora nodded, smiled faintly, like we were all pretending nothing happened. I realized then that arguing wouldn't help. There was no correcting the moment, no clever words, no sudden charm, no apologies that could erase the memory. I could feel it, the embarrassment, not just mine, everyone else's, maybe too, but mostly mine. I didn't want to shout. I didn't want to beg. I didn't want to justify anything, because justification would make it worse. I thought of every time I'd paid, helped, driven, fixed, or sacrificed. Every effort that had been ignored, minimized, or laughed at. And I understood something. The only response left was action. Quiet, controlled. No audience, no applause. Just steps I had to take alone. I slipped the ring back into my pocket, kept my head down, and waited. The rest of the evening was a haze of plates and polite conversation. Words bounced off me without sinking in. I realized how much I had misread everything, and in that instant, I knew the story of that night would not be about love. It would be about humility, and how quickly hope can turn into something else entirely. I left the table quietly, making sure no one noticed I was standing, walked to the coat rack by the entrance, hung up my jacket carefully, checked my pockets, wallet, keys, phone, ring, all accounted for. I didn't glance back. Didn't want another stare, another whispered comment. Out in the hallway, the muffled laughter and conversation followed me. I let it. It wasn't my concern anymore. I pulled the ring from my pocket, held it in my hand for a moment. The weight felt different now, heavier. Then I did something I hadn't expected myself to do. I opened my phone, checked messages from Leora. No new texts about the proposal, just casual conversation earlier in the day. I typed a quick note to her. "We'll talk later. I'll see you tomorrow." Sent it. No emoji, no apology, just words. Done. I moved to the manager who had been watching discreetly. Whispered, "Please keep tonight quiet. Nothing to announce. Just close it off." He nodded, understanding, no questions asked. Back at the coat check, I paid my own tab for the night. Left a tip. Nothing extravagant. Nothing showy, just necessary. I walked toward the exit, felt the cool night air hit my face, pulled my collar up against it, took a deep breath. I called my brother on the drive home. No need to go into detail. Just, "Long night. Everything's okay." He asked if I wanted to talk. I said, "Later." I parked at home, took the keys out, walked into the living room, sat down at the edge of the couch, ring still in hand, checked the timestamp on the restaurant reservation. 9 to 17 p.m., right when it happened, remembered every second. I put the ring back in its box, closed it slowly. On the kitchen counter, I left the receipt from the restaurant, straight, clean, undisturbed. I didn't tell anyone, didn't post, didn't complain, didn't call her family. Just did what needed to be done, quietly, Precisely. No drama, no fanfare, no audience. I went to bed that night thinking only of one thing. Tomorrow, I reclaim control. Not over them, not over her, over myself. The next morning, my phone blew up. Group chat notifications, missed calls, voicemails, her mom, her sister, a cousin, her best friend. Even a waiter from the restaurant texted something about the proposal video. I didn't answer. Not immediately. Her mom's text came first. That wasn't appropriate last night. We need to talk before anything else happens. Then Kalina, Leora was so uncomfortable. You embarrassed her. Don't do this again. I scrolled. Saw screenshots from someone who had filmed the proposal. Half the family laughing, half shocked. The video already circulating in her group chats. Her dad finally called. I let it go to voicemail. His tone was clipped, controlled, but I could hear the disappointment. We need to set boundaries. She wasn't ready. I sat on my couch, staring at my phone. No energy to type, no energy to explain. Her messages pinged again. I didn't want to ruin the night. I didn't know how to stop you. The words didn't comfort me. They made it worse. I hadn't ruined anything. I'd misread the entire room. Friends started messaging. Did you see the video? Oh man, that was brutal. Every message felt like a mirror held up to my embarrassment. I didn't respond to any of them. I didn't need to. The humiliation wasn't theirs to fix. It was mine. I called into work late, told my manager I wasn't feeling well. I avoided texts, avoided social media, avoided mirrors. Each ping made my stomach tighten. Each notification reminded me that what I thought would be a moment of love had become a public display of discomfort. By evening, I realized the fallout wasn't over. People would talk about it, repost it, remember it. I had to accept that this was now part of my story, and there was nothing I could do to change it, only to move forward, quietly, carefully. 2 days later, Leora called me. Not over text, not a casual message. She wanted to meet. I suggested a quiet coffee shop, neutral ground. She agreed. When I saw her, she was wearing the same calm expression she had at dinner, the one that never quite gave away what she was thinking. I sat across from her, placed my hands on the table, didn't reach for the ring. She didn't smile. Not really, just a nod. I think we need to talk about last night, she said. I nodded. I know. She paused, looked out the window, took a sip of her coffee, then looked back at me. You shouldn't have done that, she said. Simple, blunt. I let it sit, didn't defend, didn't argue. I thought it was right, I said. I thought the timing, the setting, everyone here. Timing was terrible, she interrupted. You embarrassed me, and everyone else didn't know how to react. Her tone wasn't cruel, just matter-of-fact. I nodded. I see that now. Another pause. Silence stretched. You're a good guy, she said finally. But maybe not in the way you think. Her words hit harder than any shouting could. I didn't speak, just listened, took it in. She shifted in her chair. I never told you I wanted that kind of proposal. I wanted something private, something we both understood, not a public spectacle. I leaned back. My hands remained on the table, my jaw tight. Do you still see a future with me? I asked quietly. Her eyes softened, but her answer wasn't comforting. I don't know. Maybe someday, not now. No anger, no blame, just uncertainty. And that uncertainty hurt more than ridicule ever could. I didn't shout, didn't beg, didn't cry. I simply nodded, took a deep breath, stood up. I understand, I said. She didn't argue, didn't stop me. We left the cafe, walking in opposite directions without holding hands. No dramatic gestures, no raised voices, just distance. That was the conversation that closed the chapter. It wasn't fiery, it wasn't explosive, it was final. Later that week, I ran into Leora's younger cousin, Mila, at the grocery store. She was 8, bright eyes, curious, always asking questions. When she saw me, she froze, then whispered almost to herself, "I thought you were already family." Her words hit harder than anything anyone else had said, not because she understood the situation. She didn't. She just assumed it was the natural order of things. I knelt down to her level, smiled softly, tried to make it light. "I thought so too," I said quietly. Mila frowned, tilted her head. "But what happened?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Instead, I took her hand for a second. "Nothing you need to worry about," I said. And just like that, she skipped off toward the cereal aisle, humming. I stood in the middle of the aisle alone. For a moment, the embarrassment, the jokes, the awkward silences, all of it didn't matter. All I could think about was that a small, innocent kid believed in me, believed that I was already part of this family. And even though the adults had made the night humiliating, that brief moment of innocence reminded me what had felt real. No audience, no judgment, no laughter, just a quiet truth. And it was enough to keep me steady. After that night, things settled into a quiet rhythm. I stopped attending family dinners, not with anger or revenge, simply distance. I returned the table reservation at Belarno's, requested no record of my name. Group chats? I muted them. Notifications off. Calls from her family went straight to voicemail. I listened when I wanted, ignored when I didn't. Leora and I spoke occasionally. Short conversations, factual, necessary, no long reflections, no apologies, no dramatics. I stopped overextending. No more surprise favors. No more last-minute trips to help her brother. No paying for things out of obligation. I focused on my life, my routines, my house, my work. I drove the same car, drank the same coffee, fixed the same things. Nothing had changed materially, but mentally, everything shifted. I realized my energy was mine to manage. My time was mine to control. My self-respect wasn't negotiable. I didn't forgive. I didn't apologize. I didn't pretend the night never happened. I simply built boundaries. Friends noticed. They asked why I wasn't as available. I explained little, just that some things required focus elsewhere. The ring stayed in its box, tucked in a drawer I rarely opened. It wasn't bitterness, not anger, just finality. I learned that normal doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to involve speeches or confrontation. Sometimes it's just quiet, walking away from a public mistake without letting it define you, living your life without the approval of others, and letting the small, unnoticed routines reclaim a sense of control. Life didn't feel empty. It felt steady. And for the first time in a long while, I felt the peace that comes from simply owning your choices. A week later, I sat at my kitchen counter, morning sunlight filtering through the blinds. The ring box rested in front of me, closed, clean, silent. Next to it, the folded receipt from Belarno's. I traced the edges with my finger. The paper felt ordinary. The box felt heavy. I didn't touch my phone, didn't scroll social media, didn't replay the night in my head. The apartment was quiet, no messages pinging, no judgment, no laughter. I lifted the ring box once, looked at it, then put it back down. The sound of the click felt like finality. It wasn't dramatic, not symbolic in a cliché way, just a small, physical reminder of what I tried, of what went wrong, of boundaries I'd learned to set. I made myself a cup of coffee, sat at the counter, took a slow sip. Outside, the city moved on. Cars, people, birds. Inside, the ring box stayed still, a quiet marker of a night that taught me more about myself than any conversation, any confrontation, or any humiliation ever could. And for the first time, I didn't need anyone else's approval to carry it with me. I left it there, simple, unopened, untouched. And in that small, ordinary act, I felt steady.